And President Trump renewing his call for the travel ban and border wall after the mosque attack that killed more than 300 people in Egypt. He also tweeted this: "The world cannot tolerate terrorism. We must defeat them militarily and discredit the extremist ideology that forms the basis of their existence." Exclamation point. Joining me now is our Asia analyst, Gordon Chang. He's the author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Always great to have you here, Gordon.
Thanks, Laura.
So obviously, we've got a lot to digest with what has happened over these last few days. So as we watch this horrific situation in Egypt unfold, 305 people dead in this. You know, it is so hard to look at this story, to think about the children. Let's just start with, what do you think about President Trump's tweets on this?
I think he was absolutely correct when he talked about militarily defeating the terrorists. You know, Egyptian President El-Sisi actually talked about the same thing. He said, what we need to do is use brute force. In the Pentagon, they talk about winning hearts and minds and 3 cups of tea, but the terrorists obviously believe that this is a military matter. They're using guns and explosives, and we should view it in the same way. Now, you know, we defeated, in large measure, ISIS in the sense of taking their caliphate and shrinking it to really a very small portion of Syria and Iraq. And now these terrorists are going all over the place, and because of that, you have the incidents like the one in Egypt. But over time, I think that the ISIS is going to lose its allure because it lost militarily at Raqqa and Mosul and other places.
Right. And, you know, as we do track the movements and actions of ISIS overseas, at times it seems as though things might be, you know, kind of settling down in some regard. But then you have this event that happened, and you mentioned losing their footing in Raqqa. We've got the mosque attack. So what do you think the real story is? You know, in terms of the numbers and the power and the strength that is going on right now with ISIS, where are we really?
Well, I think that we're winning, but obviously this is something where you can't declare a final victory because you no longer have that big caliphate. You no longer have what looks like a nation state. This threat is going to metastasize. You're going to see fighters spreading not only through Egypt and the Levant and also Europe and the United States, but these are not going to have the same force. You know, people will die. And that's, of course, you know, something that we're going to try and prevent. But nonetheless, you know, ISIS is not going to have that same allure. And when it doesn't have that allure, the attacks, I think, will eventually shrivel.
You know, we watch these tweets, we watch the news, we listen for the words of the president. And when we hear things like he wants to crush terrorists with military means, what does that look like in terms of military personnel, placement, and the weapons? What exactly are we talking about when we see those words? Yeah,
I think what it means is we're going to have more military personnel in Syria. You know, there's a dispute as how many we have there now, maybe as many as 7,000. That number may have to go up. We're going to have to do these things. You know, in 2014, in January, when President Obama said that ISIS was the JV, you know, and we had reduced our footprint in Iraq, well, ISIS became a real threat. They actually established a caliphate. It looked like it had a lot of territory, controlled a lot of money, oil and the rest of it, and it was only through military action that we were able to shrink that along with the countries that we're working with. So unfortunately, we're going to have more people there. You know, we don't want to do that. That's politically unpopular, but we see what happens when presidents do politically popular things. These threats grow.
Right. And in terms of how this is playing out overseas, how do you think the president's words on terrorism is playing out? When he condemned the mosque attack, he reiterated that the United States will continue to stand with Egypt in the face of terrorism. How does that translate into action? How is it perceived around the world?
In Egypt, I'm sure it's going to be taken very well. In Saudi Arabia, another friend, it will be taken well. Countries like Iran are not going to like it. You know, they fuel some of this terrorism with their links with Hezbollah. So, you know, if you're not a friend of the U.S., you're not going to like the president's tweet. You know, a lot of people would like to see this thing as being sort of, you know, we do this by making sure that people love us. Well, unfortunately, that's not the way to deal with this. The way to deal with this is to win on the battlefield. You kill the enemy, you capture them, or you force them into retirement. That's an unfortunate reality, but that's the way it is.
What was your reaction when you first saw the news on the mosque? When you woke up, when we all woke up and we heard what happened and we saw the numbers begin to rise and to this great number of over 300?
Yeah, it's horrific, and we never get used to it,
right.
Regardless of what happens, because you see the children and the rest of it. This is just something that is going to shake us to our core as long as it continues.
It has to stop.
Has to stop.
It has to stop. Well, hopefully we will have some sort of resolution. We will have, some answers here as we move forward with this unfortunate story. Gordon Chang, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thanks, Laura.
Appreciate it.